Notre Dame is one of the biggest brands in football, and the amount of prestige that comes with playing for the Fighting Irish is just insane and pretty awesome. They have won multiple national titles, are always near the top of the rankings, and in the past few years, it's been no different. They've made 2 college football playoff appearances, and while they have yet to get to the national title game, Brian Kelly has the Fighting Irish knocking on the door, and it's just a matter of time before they finally get there. Looking ahead towards 2021, the Irish have a couple of question marks, but they are one of the best teams in the country, a legitimate college football playoff contender, and could sneak up on a lot of people. In today's video, I want to preview the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, talk about their depth chart, schedule, and roster, and just basically go through what we can expect from this team this year. But right before we get into it, we just hit 50,000 subscribers on the channel, so I want to say thank you guys for that. And now we're on the road to 100K, so in order to hit that goal, we need every one of you guys to subscribe, and nearly 80% of you guys are not, so be sure to hit that button as it really helps. And now let's get started and talk about Notre Dame football. As we always do, let's take a look back at last season and see how the Fighting Irish did. They started out ranked number 10 in the country and opened up with a win over Duke. From there, they absolutely murdered South Florida, beat Florida State, and won a thrilling game over Louisville. They got as high as number 3 in the country, where from there, they go on to beat Pitt and took care of Georgia Tech before a huge game against number 1 Clemson. College game day came for this, and in arguably the best game of the 2020 college football season, Ian Book and the Fighting Irish took care of DJ Uiagalelei and the Clemson Tigers, and they won 47-40 in double overtime. From there, Notre Dame was in the driver's seat to the college football playoff, and they just had to survive. They took care of a pesky Boston College team, and then beat number 19 North Carolina 31-17, and with one more win, they would have a really good chance at making the playoff. Thankfully, they would easily beat Syracuse before they would have a rematch with number 3 Clemson in the ACC Championship game. Unfortunately, they lost by 24 points in this game, and questions were brought up about whether they should be in the playoff, but because of their earlier win against them, they ended up getting the nod over Texas A&M. They're matched up with number 1 Alabama in the Rose Bowl, and they actually played the Crimson Tide very tough and did better than Ohio State. While the season did not end how they wanted to, it was a big step for Brian Kelly, and now the Irish look towards 2021, and it'll be somewhat of a rebuilding year. In terms of some coaching changes, we saw their defensive coordinator Clark Lee take the head coaching job at Vanderbilt, and he was replaced by arguably one of the top up-and-coming coordinators in the country in Cincinnati defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman, and I am really excited to see what he can do there. In terms of their actual recruiting class, Notre Dame finished ranked 9th in the country, and the class was headlined by guys such as Blake Fisher, Tyler Buckner, and Rocco Spindler. They really weren't too involved in the transfer portal, but the 2 guys they got were pretty good. Kane Madden was one of the top offensive linemen in the portal from Marshall, and they got him, and then they also got Wisconsin quarterback transfer Jack Cohn. Now we can easily translate into their quarterback room, as Jack Cohn is the presumed starter, but he has some competition. I did a video about the entire Notre Dame quarterback room, so be sure to check that one out. But his backups include Drew Pine, Tyler Buckner, and Brendan Clark. Clark was a late riser, but I don't really think he has a shot in this one. Was a big-time recruit coming out of high school and is seen as the future of the program. And Drew Pine was a guy who was a prodigy who kind of fell off, but now he has gotten it back together, has worked hard, and can actually push Cohn for the starting job. In my opinion, Jack will be the opening day 1 starter, but if he struggles, don't be surprised if you see either Pine or Buckner, or a mix of all 3 of them. Overall, though, I think Brian Kelly is going to figure out that quarterback position, and the best guy will show himself. Moving over to the running back spot, I really like who they have. They're led by one of the best backs in America in Kyren Williams, and while he was never really supposed to be that big of a factor, he broke out and had a 1,000-yard rushing season last year, and took up that number 1 spot. Behind him, they'll have sophomore Chris Tyree, who was a 5-star recruit last year, and will be a great 1-2 punch. After that, you have Sibo Flemster, Audric Estime, and Logan Diggs, and I'm curious to see which of those 3 guys breaks out. The wide receiver spot is a little bit worrisome for me, as I don't really have a guy who I think is a number 1 option just yet. While there definitely will be someone who breaks out, the starters as of right now will likely be Kelvin Austin Jr., Braden Lindsey, and Avery Davis. Guys like Lawrence Keys, Xavier Watts, Joe Wilkins, Jaden Thomas, Lorenzo Styles, and Deion Colsey will all get a chance to play as well, and I'm really curious to see who's going to break out, as they really haven't had a true number 1 wide receiver since Chase Claypool. The tight end spot is a lot of fun, as they have my favorite tight end in all of America in Michael Mayer. I think this guy is the real deal and will be a 1st-round pick in a couple of years, and he could go down as the best Fighting Irish tight end ever if he puts it all together. Behind him, you'll have George Takix, Kevin Bauman, Kane Barong, and Mitchell Evans, and I do wonder who will be the next guy to step up behind them. At left tackle, more than likely true freshman Blake Fisher is going to start, and apparently this is an opportunity that not many players have ever had. Tosh Baker will push him for that spot, but it would be really cool to see Blake Fisher start. At left guard, you're going to likely have junior Zeke Correll. At center, you're going to have Jarrett Patterson. At right guard, you're going to have Marshall transfer Kane Madden. And at right tackle, you're going to have Josh Lugg. Switching over to that defensive side of the ball, they lose Jeremiah Owusu, who was one of the top linebackers in the country, but there are plenty of guys ready to step up, and they have a bona fide superstar in the secondary. At the defensive end spots, you're going to have Myron Tagovailoa Omosa, and then senior Justin Adamilola. And at the nose tackle spot, you'll likely have Kurt Heinisch and Howard Cross. And then finally at the defensive tackle spot, you're going to have Jason Adamilola and Riley Mills. At the Notre Dame Viper spot, you'll have Isaiah Foskey and Jordan Botello. And then at the linebacker spots, you're going to have Drew White, Maurice Lufau, and Jack Kaiser. Finally, when you look towards the secondary, at one corner spot, you're more than likely going to have Cam Hart, and at the other one, you're going to have Clarence Lewis, with guys like Ramon Henderson, Philip Riley, JoJo Johnson, and Tariq Bracy also getting plenty of snaps. At the strong safety spot, you're going to have two seniors in Houston Griffith and DJ Brown. And finally, we get to the absolute superstar of this defense, who I'm so excited to watch, Kyle Hamilton. In my opinion, he's the top safety in the country and is the best Notre Dame defender since Manti Te'o. Hamilton is all over the field and will 100% be a top 10 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft as long as he stays healthy and lives up to expectations. Overall, the defense has some question marks, but I think they will be pretty good in 2021. Obviously, the running back room, the offensive line, and the defense will be solid, and there will be question marks at both the quarterback spot and the wide receiver room. But how will they handle the schedule? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. The Irish open up on a national stage against Florida State, as they will go on the road to Tallahassee for this Week 1 matchup. This game will be on a Sunday, so most of the Week 1 action will already be done, and there'll be a lot of eyes on this game. While Florida State is headed in the right direction under Mike Norvell, I'm not fully bought into what the Seminoles have to offer right now, and while I think they will be able to hang with them with the nice crowd they have, I think Notre Dame will pull away in the second half and cruise to 1-0. From there, they'll go back home and play against Toledo, and unless something truly bizarre happens, Notre Dame should be 2-0. In Week 3, they open up an old rivalry against Purdue, and as a Purdue fan myself, I'm very excited for this game. While I don't think the Boilermakers really have any shot, Notre Dame should be able to pull away in the second half just like that Florida State game, and the Irish will be 3-0. The first huge test comes in a neutral site fashion against the Wisconsin Badgers. Wisconsin will more than likely be the number 1 team in the Big Ten West this year, and will likely be ranked top 10 to 15 when this matchup happens. This is a game that could go either way, and it's really going to depend on the quarterback play. Wisconsin has Graham Mertz, plus they always have a reliable offensive line and rushing attack, so I think they'll put up a great fight. But if by this time Notre Dame does not have any star wide receivers, or they don't have much clarity at the quarterback position, they could lose this game. In my opinion, it will be 50-50, but as of right now, I'm going to give the nod to Notre Dame, just because I think they will have that quarterback spot figured out by then. Things get no easier for the Fighting Irish the next week as Cincinnati comes to town. As badly as I want to pick the Bearcats in this game, I don't know if I can. If this was on the road against Cincinnati, I would 100% pick the Bearcats. It's going to be a nearly perfect game from Desmond Ridder and a perfectly called game from Luke Fickell if Cincinnati wants to win on the road against Notre Dame. I think this is another 50-50 game that'll go back and forth, but for right now, I'm going to pick the Irish, but do not be surprised if Cincinnati wins this game. The following week, they go on the road to Virginia Tech, and Justin Fuente has a pretty hot seat right now, and this would be a game that he would love to win. I am not confident in the quarterback play of the Hokies this year, as Braxton Burmeister is not very experienced, and while Virginia Tech should have a full stadium for this game, I think Notre Dame will pull away in the second half, just like that Purdue and Florida State matchup. Their next 2 games are very difficult as well, but thankfully they get them at home. The USC Trojans come to town on October 23rd, and I think this will be a really fun game. Just like Cincinnati and Wisconsin, I believe this one will be 50-50, and the only reason I give the nod to Notre Dame right now is because they've won the last few matchups, and I think the home crowd will pull through for them. You might be saying, Scott, you've already picked them in 3 50-50 games. Well, their time is going to run out, as in the following week they will play against North Carolina at home, and I think the Tar Heels are going to get that one done. While North Carolina does have a few things to figure out, like who the wide receivers will be, I think this Mac Brown-led team will be very well coached. They have a lot of experience, and Sam Howell will be the best player on the field, and I do believe he's going to lead them to a win in South Bend. Notre Dame fans can complain all they want about that pick, but if you can go 3-1 against Wisconsin, Cincinnati, USC, and North Carolina, I think you're in really good shape, and I also do believe they are bound to lose one. From there, they have another home game against Navy, which should be a win, and then they go on the road to Virginia. The last time I remember Notre Dame going on the road to the Cavaliers, Deshaun Kaiser found Will Fuller for a game-winning touchdown, but I do not expect it to be a close game like that, and just like a lot of these other games, I think Notre Dame will pull away in the second half. I love what Jeff Collins is doing at Georgia Tech, but I do not think the Yellow Jackets are quite there yet, as they will come to South Bend on November 20th. I love Jeff Sims and some of the young playmakers on this Georgia Tech team, but I don't think there's any way that they really hang around and win this game. For their final game of the year, they'll go on the road to Stanford, and as I've mentioned in prior videos, I don't have a lot of confidence in what David Shaw is doing at Stanford, as they lost their best player in Davis Mills, and I'm just pretty concerned about what's going on right now. Stanford does play tough, and we could see David Shaw's coaching really come out this year, but in my opinion, Notre Dame is going to win that game, and they're going to be 11-1. At this point, it's truly going to depend on how other teams do, but I could see them squeaking into the 2021 college football playoff. A schedule that consists of Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Florida State, USC, and North Carolina is pretty dang good, and if they can go 4-1 in those games, you cannot say they don't have a difficult schedule and that they didn't play anybody. I do expect 11 wins, and there will be 5 games that determine this year. It'll be at Florida State, neutral site against Wisconsin, home against Cincinnati, home against USC, and home against North Carolina. Just reading that off, the Irish got incredibly lucky as they don't have to play any of those 4 opponents on the road, and they get 3 of their hardest games at home. I think the schedule lines up really nicely for Notre Dame this year to have a good finish, and while most years they win at least 10 games, I think the schedule will help the season and the team look a little bit better than they are, and I'm really curious to see how all this plays out. The quarterbacks and the wide receivers are the biggest question mark of this team, but I do believe that they will figure it out, and this defense could be a lot of fun. Let me know what you think though. If you're a Notre Dame fan, let me know what you think I got right and what I got wrong, your prediction for the team, and any other thoughts you have on Notre Dame. If you're not a Notre Dame fan, let me know what team I should do next and what your prediction is. And before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you are new here, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about what happened to Brady Quinn. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.